Next guest knows a thing or two about battles on Capitol Hill. He's a former GOP congressman from the state of Florida. Colonel Allen West, thanks so much for being here tonight. All right, Colonel, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you.
All right. So what's your take on what happened with in Washington on Friday night?
Well, I think one of the things that from the presidential perspective, Donald Trump has to get a better understanding of policy so that he does not have people that lead him down the primrose path. And I think also from the Speaker's perspective and from the House GOP perspective, they should have had this thing a lot wired. They've had 7 some odd years to be able to come up with the right type of plan to execute it. When you hear about the repeal part, they should have had this on the president's desk, and you can set the date that you want for the repeal. But the most important thing is to effectively communicate a message of how you're going to solve the problem with the healthcare system in the United States of America. And as I've been out talking to people, there are very few people that could understand what the House GOP plan was.
Well, what do you mean when you say that President Trump doesn't understand policy? What does that mean?
Well, I think that you've got to get down into the nuts and bolts. You have to be able to read these laws, and you know, he admitted that it was a little bit of a learning curve. You know, I met a woman by the name of Judy Snyder. She was with the Congressional Research Service when I was first coming into Congress, and she said everything on Capitol Hill is about 3 Ps. It's about policy, politics, and procedure. And I think that someone should have, you know, taken the president aside and said, let's understand this whole thing about budget reconciliation. Let's understand this Byrd rule and all of these different machinations they go through so that you can better understand how this legislation should be crafted. And you need to also understand there are several key components to health care that need to be improved. First of all, you got to do something for the working poor. The second thing, you have to do something for those people with the pre-existing conditions. We need to talk about portability. We need to look at how we can expand health savings accounts. And I think that's what the president has to understand so that when Paul Ryan or someone comes from the Capitol, he can challenge them. He can push back a little bit.
But look, Colonel, with all due respect, he's got Mike Pence, you know, who knows the ins and outs of government. He's got Paul Ryan. I mean, who knows better than these guys? Are you saying, do you think that going with health care first was a mistake?
Let me tell you, when I was a commander of a battalion of 600, I had a sergeant major, I had an XO, but guess who made the final decision? It was me as a commander. President Trump is the president. He has to be able to make those decisions. It's not up to the vice president. It's not up to the speaker. And I think he has to be able to convey his guidance and his intent and what he sees as the objectives that he wants to get across, being it tax reform, healthcare reform, spending reform, budget, national security policy. So that's what I'm trying to talk about.
All right, so let's talk about his relationship with the congressional Republicans. Where does he go from here?
Yeah, I think he needs to go and sit down with congressional Republicans and once again talk about his vision. He laid it out very well in that address to the joint session of Congress, but for whatever reason, he decided that later that week on that Saturday morning to completely change the narrative. He needs to go back right now and say, this is what I see with tax reform. This is what I want to do as far as corporate business tax rate. This is what I want to reiterate about individual tax rates. You know, what does he feel about capital gains or dividends taxes? What does he feel about the death tax? How is he going to convey a simple message that every single Republican member on the House GOP can understand? Not talking about a 100% solution, but a 75 to 80% solution. But most importantly, the American people have to understand it.
And how does how does he move forward with the left and the right? And what's interesting is this guy Tim Ryan, who's a Democrat from Ohio, he says, you know, I'm ready to work with President Trump. And you know, you've got Ted Poe, who's now dropping out of the Freedom Caucus. I don't know if he's scared or what his, you know, what his statement was. I mean, it sounds like some people are realigning, and in my open, I'm saying forget about party, just get in there and do what you do best, which is making, you know, make the deal for the American people, because that's why we elected you. And we've got to give the guy some room. I mean, talk about an outsider. I mean, you know, I hear what you're saying that, you know, the guy who's at the top makes the decision. But this guy's never been the mayor of Podunk. I mean, you know, he's never been inside.
No, you're absolutely right. This is a very steep learning curve, and he is operating in an environment where the media and political elites are not going to help him. You know, the thing that President Trump has to do is express to us and express to the people on the Capitol what is his governing philosophy. How does he see the relationship between government and the individual? We know what the progressive socialist left believes. They believe that you mandate everything. They don't see individuals. They see collective groups, and they are just going to use coercion, intimidation, or any type of means by which they can ramrod their ideas through. But what is his relationship? And that's what he has to establish.
All right. Colonel Allen West, always good to see you.